A broken truce with the Hamato and Foot clans results in the safety of their sensei. Here's your look at the NECA toys, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The Last Ronin, Master Splinter. From the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comic book series, The Last Ronin, in a future New York City far different from the one we know today, a lone surviving turtle goes on a seemingly hopeless mission to obtain justice for his fallen family and friends. Based on issue number 4 of the comic, the Splinter figure stands in 7-inch scale with over 20 points of articulation and includes staff, katana, and sheath, interchangeable hands, and interchangeable forearms, so Splinter can be displayed with clean or ripped sleeves. Comes in a collector-friendly window box packaging with open front flap, featuring custom illustration by the Last Ronin artist Ben Bishop. In the hopes of finding peace, one must sometimes prepare for war. Just before we get a closer look at the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The Last Ronin, Master Splinter, I'd like to thank the folks over at NECA. Yeah, that did provide this sample we could have a look at. If you're a new viewer here, welcome. If you're a longtime viewer, welcome back. The tape measure, according to this, is going to tell us that Master Splinter stands at about 5 1/4 inches in height, or the Sensei stands at about 13.5 centimeters tall. Well, I don't have a Donnie, but I do at least have a Mikey. Here's what the figure looks like with both Michelangelo and Leonardo, two of at least the 4 turtles that we've looked at so far. There are pre-orders right now for Donatello. There's a pre-order as well for Raphael, and when eventually I get my hands on both those turtles, well, at least we'll have the quartet complete. We'll also as well free up a little bit of space between Splinter and Michelangelo to bring in the last figure we've had a look at. Here's what he also looks like with Casey Jones. Splinter has an oddity of accessories going for him. Not that I would consider a sheath, a sword, or a cane for that matter to be oddities, nor these 7 or 9 interchangeable hands if you count the ones on the ends of his forearms. But the thing that's odd about the figure is that he comes with interchangeable forearms that have specifically designated conditions of sleeves. What? The figure already has built onto his body rolled up sleeves, but if you'd rather instead the figure to have ripped sleeves, NECA's got you covered with the ones that they have over here. Just before though we look at the sleevage, let's look at the sheathage. The figure comes first of all included with a sword and a sheath. As one usually goes with the other, the sword can be sheathed inside the sheath, although there is no place that I can see that can attach onto the figure's body. I thought that this may have been a peg inside the package. When I took it out of the package, though, I realized there's no peg to be found. So it doesn't actually clip necessarily onto his belt. It's one of the few times, in fact, we've gotten ourselves a sheath that doesn't actually belong to anything, but he does have at least the gripping hand to hold the sheath, and then you can have the other hand looking as if he's drawing the sword out. Sting! That's a horrible sound for a sword. The sheath itself has been cast here in gold. There's a few little panel lines they've afforded the end of it. You can see as well it's got the rope tied off in the end. And again, when it comes to the sword matches somewhat the similar colors. You've got, first of all, the guard that matches the sheath. You got the end of the hilt that also as well matches that matte gold. But then you've got the coloring, though, of the wrapped up bandages for the actual hilt itself, matching very close to the colors that they've used for the rope. So they kept the colors pretty close. The actual blade, though, of the sword, it's not the most softest of plastics. It's got a little bit of bend to it, but you don't want to keep doing that. Of course, stop that, because that's going to, of course, break the plastic. Now, he, of course, does have hands for holding the sword. He does also have the hands for holding the sheath. He does also have the hands for holding the next included accessory, that being his cane. The cane has some additional, as you can see, grain added in there as well, so it looks like it's actually made of wood. Now, of course, this whole time talking about this, the figure's not going to be doing much of anything because he does have closed fists right now. We're going to fix that shortly because the figure comes included as well with 7 interchangeable hands. The hands that he has right now, some of them are a little bit better suited for certain weapons. Like this one here is definitely not going to be good for holding the cane, but it's going to be just right, just perfect for holding the sword. He does also come included with a pair of relaxed hands. We'll pick those up right now. And any one of these hands, by the way, can be swapped out with those forearms. So don't feel like you have to necessarily commit to the idea of using those hands. No, you don't have to do that. I guess really, if you really count the hands on the ends of those arms, then you would have a total of 11 hands, not just the 9. Each one of the hands, as you can see, have been taped up. Nice paneling added to each one of them. They've even taken the time to actually paint the separation of the nail from the rest of the fingers. Attention to detail, NECA's got you covered. The figure as well comes included with, again, some gripping hands, better for holding really the sword. And then he as well comes included with a hand that's better for really holding the cane, because this specific hand has a wider grip. So it's really good for holding the cane. And in fact, you can tip it upside down. That cane ain't going anywhere. As mentioned, though, what's odd about this figure is the fact he does actually come included. Now, again, this is the attention to detail that most companies would have just simply overlooked. Master Splinter does actually have specific hands that have ripped sleeves. In case you're wondering, though, what the hands look like on the figure's stock out of the packaging, you can see that the sleeves on this time around on the forearms are actually rolled up. So you can see that there's a slight difference. I mean, it's so slight, unless you were really looking closely at it. You can see like the bottom of it is a little bit more torn, a little bit more tattered, versus the cleaner sleeve here. To change out the hands is simply just a case of finding, first of all, the hand that belongs on what side of his body. So seeing as though I was already looking at this forearm, again, showing you guys the difference between the two. See rolled up sleeve, see ripped sleeve. Get it? Got it? Good. We're going to go ahead and just like remove the forearm. And this was one of my biggest worries. I was really thinking like, I've never really had a good experience with any figure company having removable arms, because generally the peg is really narrow. Generally it's always a case where you have to kind of heat it up in advance. I didn't have to do either. The peg already was done by the factory, but I didn't have to do any little bit of heating to remove the forearm. It was easy to do. Just to replace it with the hand that we have, I want to make sure I've got, of course, the right hand. Just going to plug it in place. And this might be the point where you actually have to work a little harder, exert a little bit more pressure to get that actually on there. So now we've got ripped sleeve on one side, we've got rolled up sleeve on the other. Obviously, for the purpose of putting this on my shelf, I'm going to decide which way I'd like to go. I mean, you don't have to necessarily commit to the idea that one has to be ripped, one has to be rolled up. If you would like to have, you could have one or the other. You could have both. You could have, again, you can do whatever you want. Basically, I'm just telling you guys you can do whatever you want. And again, like, you don't have to as well use these specific hands, which, by the way, these hands for these arms are kind of more of a relaxed variety. These, by the way, can as well be removed, and just find the hand that you want to use, and this just plugs in place. I still, though, if you've watched my other earlier reviews of the last Ronin figures, these hands are always known for like flaking off paint. I've changed off probably like 3 or 4 of these hands already in preparation for this review, and like each one of them seem to end up flaking off paint. It's not a big thing. You're not even really going to see the pegs anyways, but it's probably just the way that they painted the hands. They put the paint probably on the peg, and yeah, just moving things around, the paint just ends up coming off. It's naturally going to happen. But again, like just swapping out the hands, we'll do it on this side also as well, just to show you guys that it doesn't matter which forearms you want to use. Let's just replace it. Let's use it with a hand at least that we know we're going to be able to use it for. Pop that in place. There we go. Now we've got a gripping hand. We'll take this sword that comes included with Master Splinter. We'll slide it in place on one side. I guess really if we wanted to as well, let's just take this hand off. Find the hand that's going to be better for holding the sheath. We'll slide that in place. The figure doesn't come with any other included accessories. I kind of wish in a way that you could have come included with something else, but I'm trying to think to myself, other than just maybe a few damaged bots, maybe like severed parts for foot soldier. I don't really know. I don't really know what else they could have necessarily included with Splinter. The fact that at the very least he comes included with a sheath and a sword, I suppose, is more than enough. But again, if you want to display the figure with it, obviously there's no place to attach this onto his body, so he's going to have to hold the sheath in one hand, hold the sword in the other, and then you're good to go. Let's just remove that right now. Put it off to the side. Getting a closer look at Master Splinter. I kind of feel the same way that I felt with Casey Jones. I just happen to, again, have Casey Jones off to the side here, just bring him in as a comparison. These two figures happen to represent my biggest feelings when it comes to these specific two, that I feel like these are the best examples of these characters. Best Casey Jones we've gotten from NECA, best, I would say, even Splinter. And that also includes as well, like Splinter we've gotten from the cartoon, that includes the Splinter that we've gotten, like the Van Helsing Splinter, and that as well includes the movie Splinter. I feel like, honestly, just the details on this figure and the way they've done his gi, I feel, honestly, it's the best figure we've gotten from Splinter. Not that necessarily you would want to be displaying this guy along with your cartoon turtles, nor even would you rather really want to display this guy with your 1990s turtles, but like, it's just such a good looking Splinter. The thing I like about it is it doesn't deviate too far away from what makes Splinter Splinter. It's not too far the extreme as what we got with the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon Splinter, which for me doesn't look at all like Master Splinter. I like the idea that they've added the little mustache whiskers there on the front that just droop down. He's got the buck teeth obviously on the front. It just is a very regal looking Splinter. Very nicely painted as well. The eyes as well as the little reflection that they've added. There's no paint problems. There's no paint mishaps. It's just such a cleanly painted figure. And the panel lining still is there. Obviously, you can see there with his fur that they've added all these little black markings in there as well, just to drive home, again, the idea that this guy is pulled from the comic pages. The gi itself is done well. I mean, it's kind of more of it's very similar to the colors that Master Splinter would have in the cartoon. In that it's kind of more like that raspberry crimson color, but he's now got yellow there on the shoulders. Some additional details are done there on the front. Of course, he's got the belt on the front. This can't also be removed, although they've used a softer plastic to accommodate the gi. If we flip it around to the back, there are a few little areas where I feel like maybe the yellow could have delivered a little bit more, a second coat, maybe a second coat probably, because you can see a little bit of the bleed, I feel, just kind of peering its way at the top there. Other than that, though, like, the paint's really done well. You've got some panel lines where they would be around the wrinkles. Obviously, the gi, the jacket, is going to fit over top of his tail. This tail, by the way, is also as well a wire frame. So if you don't like the way it is configured right now, you simply just bend the tail to the point where you get it. One thing that's good, at least about Splinter, is that he's got tiny, tiny little feet. And with the feet being so small like this, obviously he's going to have a whole lot less of a footprint to keep him balanced. Splinter always is the case where if he has a long enough tail, the tail also really helps to balance the figure. Basically just resting the weight on the back of the tail and preventing the figure from falling over. Now for the figure's articulation, going back to his head sculpt here, even though he's a smaller figure than both the brothers, well, so far of what we've looked at, Michelangelo and Leonardo, and he's certainly a lot smaller than Casey Jones, he still manages to pack a wallop when it comes to the posability. So the head, first of all, is going to be on a ball joint. It allows the head to rotate all the way around. The head can look up that high, and it can also look down. While you are, though, moving it, you'll notice that he's got a few little hairs that stick out the top of his head. When you are moving it, you kind of feel that pricks against your skin. But it just moves up and down, like I said, and you can also rock it back and forth as well. Splinter does also have movements in his shoulders. The thing I've noticed, though, about the shoulders on mine is that they're very tight. It also maybe has something to do with the fact that his gi is just covering over top of that as well. But it's just a really tight movement to get his shoulders all the way around. They do move, but they move very tightly. He does have a swivel there he has two joints, so he's got a joint there closer to his bicep. There is no, by the way, bicep swivel. The bicep is actually part of the shoulder, but he has those swivel here, where his elbow would be, and then there's a hinge here, and there's a hinge here, and that allows the figure to double bend at the elbow. Hands as well rotate all the way around. I actually thought that the figure would swivel here where his sleeve would be, but his sleeve and actually his forearm are all one piece, so you can't rotate them separately. This is a softer piece of plastic, by the way. It does allow the figure to have an upper torso ball joint, which I really wasn't expecting the figure to actually have. The legs do split out about that far. They're actually working with ball joints behind the scenes. You can take the legs and move them forward. You can take the legs and move them back. The figure does have also a swivel in his knee that also serves as well as a hinge. You can see the hinge actually at the back, and that allows the legs to move forward and back. He has no articulation here where like this section attaches to his pants. Again, I thought that would be posable, but it's not. He has ankle articulation as well. The feet rock back and forth. And the figure does also have toe articulation. I suppose you as well could count the fact that his tail is also posable. The tail does rotate back and forth. And there is also a hinge there too. So not only does it rotate this way, it also hinges up and down as well. And there's also a wire built into the frame. So you can also bend the tail to get it to the desired look that you want. Excellent looking Splinter. I couldn't have asked for really a better Splinter. And again, like, I feel like this is the same feelings that I had when we looked at Casey Jones. If I just get the figure to stand here for a second. Yeah, I feel like this is the exact same feelings that I had for Casey Jones. You may not necessarily like The Last Ronin. You may have not even read The Last Ronin. If you haven't, I definitely would recommend that you do. But I would say, though, that Casey Jones and Splinter are probably the best examples of these characters. Whether you are one that collects solely just the cartoon turtles, whether you are maybe one that collects solely just the 1990s movie turtles, I feel personally, at least from what I've collected, and I've collected everything across the board of everything that's TMNT related from NECA, I think, honestly, this is the best Splinter that we've gotten. And again, we'll bring back in Michelangelo. We'll bring back in Leonardo. I didn't really bring in the original Last Ronin figures because I know I just have brought them in every single time we've looked at these new figures. I always bring in the original ones. But yeah, I'm loving the line so far. Now, already advertised on the back of Splinter, there is also the mentioned, or imaged at least, of Donatello. I think Donatello is already on a pre-order on many online sites. Raphael is already on a pre-order too. So we're really kind of covering off quite a lot of territory for The Last Ronin. I don't think it's yet been announced that we were getting ourselves April. We also are getting ourselves as well the Sinjor, and he's also getting packed as well with a standalone Sinjor patrol bot. Definitely looking forward to get my hands on that. You know, I would love to see as well, and I think they've got planned an accessory pack that's going to come include with some necessary accessories. I would love to see them as well create that giant robot that's got the Mauser hands, the heads for the hands. I think that would be also a nice release. But you know what, like, I would say, like, even though more of my heart is kind of into collecting the cartoon turtles just because I grew up with cartoon turtles the most. I think I would say honestly, like the last Ronin stuff has been some of my favorite releases so far from NECA and the TMNT franchise. The Turtles, even though we're not really wrapping up things, it kind of makes it sound like by the way I'm talking right now that we're going to be wrapping up the reviews. Far from it. There's still going to be a lot more Last Ronin reviews coming your way. But, you know, from what we've seen so far, I think it's the best of the batch. It's the best Turtles stuff that we've covered in a long time on this channel. And I would say, like, honestly, Master Splinter is the best Master Splinter figure we've ever gotten. Rather bold statements you made in that review, humbled reviewer, saying that this is the best Splinter we've gotten from NECA Toys. Yeah, I still stand by that feelings. You know, some of my favorites is always still kind of going back. I love the cartoon Splinter. The fact that he also had himself the fabric gi was also a nice touch. But there's something to be said about not only the color scheme on this one, but the sculpting. It still is classic enough looking Splinter, but they've modernized it too to fit the panel pages, of course, the last Ronin comic. Splinter doesn't come with really much in the way of accessories, and I guess really to be fair, he doesn't really need a whole lot either. He comes with a cane, which would be more than enough for a display, but he also as well comes included with a sword and a sheath. Sad though that there's no place to put the sheath on the figure's body, but that probably would have also involved having to put a hole on his belt. And if you never wanted to display the figure with that sheath, you would just only have, unfortunately, an unsightly hole left behind. The figure's painted well. There are a few little areas, like in the yellow on the top, where I feel like maybe there's a little bit of bleed. They probably could have gone in there and maybe given a second coat, but yeah, all the rest of the figure is top notch. The articulation is there where it counts. Always nice to see as well when it comes to anything like as a tail, whether it's a Xenomorph or it's a Master Splinter. Glad that they always take the time to include a wire. So the wire does also allow you not only to pose the tail in any way that you want, but the tail, as always the case, serves as well to be a third leg, so to speak, to allow Master Splinter to balance. If you don't want to use a display stand, even though the figure doesn't come included with one, at least it does use universally sized holes. So even though the figure doesn't come included technically with a display stand, you could use one from another figure company, but at least the benefit of Splinter is that he does have a tail, something that the other Turtles, well, depending on what origins you like to think of for the Turtles. Generally, for the most part, we don't really have a whole lot of tails on the Turtles to help balance them at least. Splinter at least has that available option. Nice looking Splinter, molded well, painted well, perfect looking Splinter. Big thank you once again to the folks over at NECA Toys that did provide the sample of the brand new Last Ronin Master Splinter that we could have a look at in this review. What do you guys think of the figure? Let me know down below in the comment section. Do you guys also like the touches that they added by having the removable forearms? Something too that I wanted to add in final looks here was that the simplicity, the ease it was to remove those forearms. Because I was dreading, oh my, I feel like I'm going to be wiggling that forearm and eventually breaking off the peg. But as you saw in this review, by the way, though, full disclosure, I didn't heat those forearms at all. I wanted to test the waters first to see how easy the forearms were to remove. And then based on that, based on my results, I would then go back and probably heat them up. Didn't have to heat them up at all. The first time and only time I removed the forearms, just before hitting, of course, the record, the forearms popped off very easily. And for the most part, were pretty easy to swap out. But again, I love the idea that they included removable sleeves with 2 different sleeve configurations. Who's really doing that? NECA's really doing that. If you guys did enjoy this video, I want to throw it a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing and would like to stick around for more, we're not wrapping things up yet, oh no, for Last Ronin. To be fair, though, we are wrapping up things for the review, at least of Splinter, but there will be more Last Ronin reviews coming your way. So making sure, yes, you hit the subscribe, making sure you turn on the bell, but the most important thing, the always most important thing, is that you're coming back regularly. As always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.